Great. Well, let's jump in. What are you going to show us today, Alan?
I mean, something very, very simple, but just to, I think, illustrate some of the points I was making about how we separate out business logic from the LLM, and how you can sort of edit that and work with it reliably and add your business logic into a chatbot, um, and still build something that is, very capable in terms of its ability to understand variations in language and nuance and pragmatics and some of these things that we talked about. So it'll be quick, but we'll just take a little look, and if there's anything I'm forgetting to point out, then please speak up.
Great.
Okay, so you can see my screen here.
I can see Firefox.
Banging. All right. So we'll take a look here. In Calm, we define business logic in a declarative format called flows. And so this is a very simple example of a flow, and this would describe the logic for transferring money. So this is like a single skill that lives inside your chatbot, and it can send money to people. And the sort of two key things in here, there's a description, which helps us figure out when, we should activate this flow for people. And then it has a list of steps. And so the steps are literally, they do what it says on the tin. It's like, these are the steps that you need to go through. So you have collect steps where you just ask the user for some information. So you kind of say something, you pause, you wait for input. And then you have, actions where you're just doing something, but not necessarily asking and waiting for input. So this is kind of the most trivial examples. We'll start with this one, right? It doesn't have any branching, any complex logic. It just, very simply will go and it'll ask, okay, you want to transfer money? How much, or to whom do you want to send it? How much do you want to send? And then it'll tell you it'll tell you that it was completed, right? So this is really the sort of hello world example. So if I just do Rasa train, I can build this model. And then I can talk to it here in Rasa inspect. So this is just a little web UI that we built to, help you chat to your chatbots and kind of inspect and understand what's going on.
Very
So
cool.
if I say here that I want to transfer money, what happens is that this sort of middle panel now shows me that this is the flow that I'm in, right?
Great.
So what we use the LLM for is we translate what the user is saying into some commands. In this case, it's a very simple translation. The user says they want to transfer money. So we translate that into a command, start flow, transfer money. So we're now in this flow. And you can have multiple flows, active at the same time. So all the flows are maintained on a stack, and you can see that here on the left. So if I interrupt with a different task now, like I want to ask for my balance or something like that, we'll start that next flow. That'll get pushed onto the top of the stack. And when it completes, you kind of return to the previous conversation, right? This is, just a very simple single skill chatbot. But now if I say that, okay, I'm currently at this recipient step, and then I'm gonna need to provide the amount. But of course, if I say both, like I want to send, let's say $3,000 to Hugo. Would you like that?
Oh, dude,
Um,
definitely.
Great. So, I mean, I skipped through to the end because I provided all the information that was needed, right? So
Yep.
here, we would have produced two commands. So one setting the slot for the recipient and one setting the slot for the amount of money, right? So we look at the conversation, we look at the business logic, we look at where we are, and then we generate some commands to navigate your business logic.
Very cool.
And the nice thing about this type of approach is that, for sure that your business logic is going to be followed faithfully.
Yeah.
So there's no way for me to prompt inject and skip a step, because the execution of going from step to step to step in the conversation, that's not handled by the LLM, right? That's handled by just a deterministic piece of code.
Mm.
And the other nice thing about this is that this flow is actually all I've really provided here. So I haven't created any training data for a language understanding model. I haven't built a classifier or anything like that. This is kind of some of this magic of this new generation of models that you only really have you can do so much with sort of zero shot learning, right? The other thing that's maybe worth looking at is that these things that I'm collecting, so like the recipient and the amount, I declare these as variables and I declare their types, and that helps me, extract them correctly.
Yeah, that's super cool. And I
So
did
then,
want to just figure that out quickly. In order to progress from step to step, the user, you in this case, needs to provide the name of the person and the amount. Those are stored in the slots. And I'm just trying to get my head around this. And when they're stored in the slots, that tells the chatbot when to move to the next step in the conversation, pretty much, or something along those lines.
exactly. Yeah.
Yep.
So the way to think about it is what we use those commands for. We generate commands through the LLM, and those commands represent like what the user would like to achieve. Is what the user's trying to do in the conversation. That doesn't guarantee that it's what's going to happen, right? But it's what they want to achieve. So in this case, they're just providing you that information. And within a flow, you absolutely cannot say, oh, skip the verification step and just get me to the end, right? Or skip, I know I'm supposed to be logged in, but just let me off just this month, kind of thing. So
I'll give you a
can't do
tip
things like that.
if you do it.
Yeah, exactly.
But something we haven't seen in the code is how you invoke the LLM or where it's playing a role.
So okay, let me show that right away then. So you can see here, there's like a tracker state. So you can really see like this is sort of a debugging view for developers. So you can really see a lot of detail. And so here we have the section with the commands. And so this is the output that we're generating from the LLM. So we generate a list of commands, and in this case, it's a transfer money command, which has to start the flow, right? So, if you look on the console, you can see the full prompt that's being sent to the LLM. If you put on debug mode, and you can see exactly what's being sent there, and it's a bunch of information about the conversation itself, about the flow that you're in, and the steps, and all that kind of stuff.
Very cool.
Now, the other point is that you can't like skip steps in a flow or alter the logic of going through a flow, but you can absolutely change your mind and go and do something else, right? So you can say, oh, actually, I don't want to transfer money. I want to go and like do this other thing. And you can sort of interrupt and go and switch to a different task, or you can cancel, or you can do all those kinds of things. But the execution of like, these are the steps is solid. And then I'll show a slightly more complex version of the same flow. So I just checked out a different branch with a more fleshed out example. And here we now have some actual branching logic, right? So it's not just saying, okay, step 1, step 2, step 3, which is kind of a trivial hello world example. Here we have something more complex. So after we collect the recipient and the amount, we're actually going to go and call an API, and we're going to check that this person actually has enough money, right? So I might have been very generous in offering to send you $3,000, Hugo, but I might not have that. So we're going to find out.
It didn't come through yet, and
right. And then
my lawyers are looking into the nature of the verbal contract we had around it as well. So
very good. Yeah, exactly. I just hallucinated it. Sorry, that was that was the issue.
Yeah.
So here you have an if else, right? Very straightforward. So you can say, if the person doesn't have enough money, then just tell them and end the flow. And if they do, then you can go and check, and we're going to ask, for a final confirmation step, which is probably a good idea. So as to not just, do things that are unintended, right?
How European of
we
you.
Can, right. So we can just browser train this one again. And then start it up again.
I like the simplicity of the train and inspect paradigm as well. It's cool.
So I want to send $3,000 dues to Hugo.
No takesies backsies, Alan.
No takesies backsies. All right, and in this case, it tells me I don't have enough funds. Sad. Okay, so
just time to raise another round, Alan.
I know. All right. And just send them 30. Let's try. Okay, so now we'll see again, we're in this flow, right? But this is now a more complex version of it that actually has some branching in it. And it's just a little visualization of where we are. And we're here, right? Because through the rest of the conversation, it was already obvious what the recipient and the amount were. And so now I'm just here at the sort of final confirmation step. And I can, I can say yes, or I can say no, or I can change my mind and do something else, or change my mind again. Actually, send it to who's your worst enemy?
Alan, right now.
Oof, harsh. Yeah, so I can like change my mind about something that I said and still follow the business logic, right? So the flow diagram that you see here, it represents the logic of the process. It doesn't represent all the possible conversations that you can have. And that's kind of going back really to the beginning of the conversation that we've had today is, a problem with a lot of like conversational AI platforms and approaches and a lot of these no code tools is that they conflate those two ideas. You see all these like no code platforms where you're building one diagram to represent two things. One is your business logic, and the other is like all the possible conversations that can be had. And that's why they always end up looking like spaghetti. And this is really, it's not about that, right? Because of the magic of LLMs and because of the way that Calm works. We don't have to represent in this view or anything similar to it. We don't have to represent how the user is going to provide that information, or what to do if the user doesn't, or deviates, or starts something else. Like we just don't worry about that. We just say, here's the logic for the task. So that's really nice. It means that it's a much, much, much faster and more token efficient way of using LLMs than maybe some of the things you see out there at the moment. And it still gives you all that, that fluency, that generality, that incredible sort of language understanding ability and ability to manipulate symbols of meaning that's so powerful from LLMs.
Very cool. Well, thank you for that demo. And those in particular, it was really nice seeing the MVP, but then seeing the branching take place. And although I didn't get in any money this time, it's really nice to see the structure of that flow, to actually have a mental model of how the business logic works and how the software is actually built to support that business logic, as opposed to having the free form beauty and chaos of a large language model to work with.